Hello guys, today we're talking about the man who saved 669 children. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Now, let's move on to the video. Imagine you being a parent and knowing that a war is coming. You don't know exactly when it will start. But deep down, you know that your children may not survive it. Now, imagine that a stranger appears and offers you one chance, one train ticket, one opportunity to send your son or daughter to safety. But there is one condition. You probably won't be going with them. For hundreds of families in Europe in 1939, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was real. And the man who gave them that chance was someone almost nobody had ever heard of. His name was Nicholas Winton. And for nearly 50 years, the war had no idea what he had done. Nicholas Winton was born in London in 1909. His parents were Jewish immigrants who had moved to Britain years earlier, hoping for a safer future for their family. As a young man, Winton was intelligent, hardworking, and ambitious. He eventually became a stockbroker in London and lived what almost people would consider an ordinary life. He wasn't a soldier, a politician, or a famous activist. He was simply a young man with a normal job. At the end of 1938, Winton had plans for a skiing holiday. Instead, one of his friends asked him to come to Prague. At the time, Prague was facing a humanitarian crisis. Thousands of refugees had fled their homes after Nazi Germany expanded its control across parts of Europe. Families were crowded into temporary shelters and camps. Many had lost everything. Food was scarce. Resources were limited, and everyone feared what would happen next. When Winton arrived, he immediately realized the situation was worse than he had imagined. Parents weren't asking how to save themselves. They were asking how to save their children. Many of them believed they would eventually be arrested or killed, but if their children could escape, maybe their families will have a future. Most people would have felt sorry for them and move on. Nicholas Winton decided to do something. He had no organizations behind him, no governmental support, no large team helping him. He simply started working. His idea was simple, in theory, but incredibly difficult in practice. He wanted to bring children from Czechoslovakia to Britain before war broke out. But to do that, every child needed documents, every child needed official permissions and transportation, and every child needed a British family willing to care of them. Finding those families became one of the biggest challenges. Back in Britain, Winton placed advertisements in newspapers asking families to open their homes to refugee children. Some people ignored him, others couldn't help, but many families stepped forward. Slowly, names began filling his lists. Winton spent countless hours answering letters and organizing paperwork. He reportedly worked from a hotel room in Prague, turning tables into makeshift office covered with documents and photographs. Time was running out. Every week the political situation became more dangerous. Everyone knew war was getting closer. Finally, in March of 1939, the first train carrying children left Prague. For many parents, saying goodbye at the train station was one of the hardest moments of their lives. Imagine being forced to place your child on a train and not knowing if you will ever see them again. Some parents smiled to keep their children calm. Others cried after the train disappeared into the distance. Many children believed they would return home in a few weeks. Few understood that this goodbye might be forever. The first train arrived safely in Britain. Then another train followed, and another. As news spread, more families desperately hoped their children could get a place on the next departure. Nicholas Winton kept working. Every successful train meant dozens of lives saved. By the summer of 1939, 8 trains had successfully transported children out of danger. But then, 669 children had escaped. 669. It's an incredible number, but behind every number was a face, a family, a story, a future, doctors, teachers, engineers, parents, grandparents. Entire generations exist because of those trains. But there was still one more train planned, the ninth train. It was scheduled to leave Prague on September 1st, 1939, Around 250 children were expected to be on board. Everything was ready. Then, history changed. On the exact same day, Germany invaded Poland. The Second World War had begun. Borders closed. Railways stopped operating. The train never left. Most historians believe that the majority of those children did not survive the war. For Nicholas Winton, it was a heartbreaking moment. He had saved hundreds, but he knew there were many of more he couldn't reach in time. After the war ended, Winton returned to his normal life. He never considered himself a hero. He never wrote books about his actions. He never went on speaking tours. He never tried to become famous. In fact, many of his closest friends had absolutely no idea what he had done. Years turned into decades. The story remained hidden. Then, in 1988, something unexpected happened. Winton's wife was cleaning their attic when she discovered an old scrapbook. Inside were photographs of children, letters from parents, transport documents, and a long list of names. She quickly realized she had uncovered an incredible story. Eventually, journalists learned about the documents, and the story reached British television producers. They invited Nicholas Winton onto a television program. He believed he was simply there for an interview. He had no idea what was about to happen. During the show, the host asked a question into the audience. Is there anyone here who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? Suddenly, a woman sitting near him stood up. Then another person stood up. Then another, and another. Before long, nearly the entire audience was standing. The room was filled with adults whose lives exist because of the work Winton had done almost 50 years earlier. Many of them had children. Many had grandchildren also. Some estimates suggest that the descendants of those 669 children number in the thousands today. One decision by one person changed the future of entire families. Nicholas Winton sat there speechless. He was visibly emotional, not because he wanted recognition, but because he was seeing the lives that had continued because of actions he had taken as a young man. It was one of the most powerful moments ever shown on television. Years later, people began calling him the British Schindler, comparing him to Oskar Schindler, who had also saved lives during the war. Winton eventually received several honors for his work, but perhaps the most important reward wasn't a medal. It wasn't fame, or it wasn't recognition. It was knowing that hundreds of children had been given the chance to grow